Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. We have good news from former President Trump and his staunch supporters. After that, let's look at what Biden did in his first week since he took office. It seems he has hardly done anything other than sign various executive orders. In addition to suspending the Keystone Pipeline project, he struck a blow to the U.S. energy industry by launching a sweeping stimulus plan. Now it is Wall Street's turn to worry. Communist China's infiltration is at the root of our current situation. They expected that once Biden entered the White House, their pressure would be relieved. As it turns out, their dreams are falling apart. At the end of the show, we will show you two videos that will make you laugh. One more thing I would like to address before we get into our episode today. Since January 20th, this channel has been demonetized by YouTube. We have received many donations with inspiring messages. I am very grateful for everyone's support. It is a great honor to be with you on the road to fight for freedom and justice. We will continue to make videos for you no matter what. If you would like to support us, please donate to donorbox.org/front-page. The link is in the description down below. Thank you for your support. Okay, let's get into it. President Trump has a new move. He announced on Monday, January 25th, the establishment of an official former president's office in Florida to serve as an external medium for public responses, organizing activities, and issuing statements. The press release issued by the newly formed office of former President Trump states, "Today, the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, formally opened the office of former president. The office will be responsible for managing President Trump's correspondence, public statements, appearances, and official activities to advance the interests of the United States and to carry on the agenda of the Trump administration through advocacy, organizing, and public activism. President Trump will always and forever be a champion for the American people." Whoa, when the former president said a couple of days ago that he would do something, but not very soon, we didn't expect to hear from him so quickly. He must have a different time measure than us. How nice is that? Next, the CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, the person who delivered the mystery notes to the White House for President Trump, said he might run for governor of Minnesota. He told the Associated Press on January 23rd that the former president had told him that he would back his bid for Minnesota's governor. He said Trump told him, "Mike, if you did it, I would be behind you." He is very positive about the former president's endorsement. "Of course, it would help," he said to the wire service. "Why wouldn't it help? The guy was the best president in history." However, he is currently trying to prove his claims about alleged voter during the November 3rd election and won't make a decision until the fight is finished. According to the Star Tribune, Mr. Lindell is working with former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn in proving his claims. It is good to see that people are still coming forward. Let's see what Joe Biden did in his first days in office. He is expected to launch a $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, which stirred concerns among the financial community and investment circles. Bank of America warned that this could be a key factor in the bursting of the asset bubble. These stimulus policies have led the federal balance sheet to hit 42% of U.S. GDP, while the U.S. budget deficit is set to hit 18% of the GDP. Jeremy Grantham, co-founder of Boston-based asset management firm GMO, warned that Joe Biden's economic recovery plan will propel them to perilous new heights, followed by an inevitable crash. When you have reached this level of obvious super enthusiasm, the bubble has always, without exception, broken in the next few months, not a few years. He envisions a collapse rivaling the 1929 crash or the dot-com burst of 2000, when the NASDAQ Composite Index plunged almost 80% in 31 months. Wall Street has made a tremendous amount of money from the wave of globalization in the last decades. They assisted the CCP-controlled military-industrial companies, banks, and large corporations to enter the U.S. stock market without auditing. American money has been used to help the CCP get stronger and gave them more power to tie up the world with profits. In the process, Wall Street firms obtained lucrative returns from these operations. This is why they hated former President Trump, because the Trump administration brought jobs back to the U.S. and has increased its scrutiny of funds coming from China. It also restricted U.S. investment in specific CCP companies. This was an obstacle for Wall Street to accumulate more wealth. Therefore, they have donated a huge amount of money to support Trump's opponent. They dreamed about making a fortune in Biden's era. Now they have to get themselves ready to pay for the bills of their choices as well. New Mexico is not happy with Biden either. New Mexico voted for Biden in November. Today, however, the state is shocked by the 60-day moratorium on oil and gas leases issued by the newly inaugurated president. New Mexico is one of the top 10 energy producers in America. It has more than 7% of the total proved crude oil reserves nationwide. In 2018, it became the third largest oil-producing state and has rapidly grown in recent years. Although Biden called for a transition away from the oil industry during his campaign.
Well, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
New Mexicans did not wake up. Instead, the state voted for Biden. According to the Associated Press, many people are now expressing regrets to Biden's policy. Republican leaders in the state, as well as local officials in New Mexico, say any move to make the moratorium permanent would be damaging to the state's economy. The article said, President Joe Biden's 60-day moratorium on new oil and natural gas leases and drilling permits is prompting widespread concerns in New Mexico, where spending on education and other public programs hinges on the industry's success. Dale Janway, mayor of Carlsbad, was confused by the inconsistency of Biden's words and actions. He told the Associated Press, during his inauguration, President Biden spoke about bringing our nation together. Eliminating drilling on public lands will cost thousands of New Mexicans their jobs and destroy what's left of our state's economy. How does that bring us together? Environmental efforts should be fair and well-researched, not knee-jerk mandate that just hurt an already impoverished state. Half of New Mexico's production occurs on federal lands, with hundreds of millions of dollars in annual royalties. Members of Congress from other Western states have also raised their concerns, saying the ripple effect of the moratorium will hurt small businesses already struggling because of the pandemic. You may be wondering, why would Biden sign these executive orders that hurt his allies and supporters? As I've talked about before, there is no common interest among Biden supporters besides preventing President Trump being reelected. Other than that, their interests are very much at odds or even opposed to each other. It's impossible for Biden to take every group into account. He is for sure not able to benefit every creditor evenly. Those whose interests suffer are certain to resent. Those who benefit are not satisfied either, since they believe that they deserve more. Without benefit in return, who would support an old man with nothing achieved in his 47 years of political career? So these bad policies are not necessarily terrible in the sense that they will help to wake people up. People introspect only when they taste the bitter medicine themselves. God is merciful. He gives men opportunities to realize their own mistakes. If men make the right choice in the process, it can turn to a happy ending. Next, let's talk about the situation of the Chinese Communist regime. As we all know, the worst foreign interference in the election is from the CCP. The cancel culture and far-left ideology in our society over the decades is also a result of the infiltration of the CCP. The future of the U.S. is also tied to the future of the CCP. If the CCP falls, the U.S. can also be freed from far-left ideology. In fact, the Chinese regime is facing a huge crisis, not only from its conflicts inside, but also from the international siege led by the Trump administration. We will focus on the American and international part today, and we will talk about its internal conflicts in the future. The goal of the Chinese Communist Party is to rule the whole world. FBI Director Christopher Wray said last July that China is engaged in a whole-of-state effort to become the world's only superpower by any means necessary. President Trump blocked the CCP's further expansion. Reported by the Epoch Times, in the past 4 years, former President Donald Trump's administration broke with previous governments to confront the Chinese Communist Party head-on, pushing back against its malign actions aimed at remodeling the world to its own brand of techno-totalitarianism. J. Michael Waller, a senior analyst for strategy at the Washington-based think tank Center for Security Policy, told the Epoch Times, Trump tore a hole through the CCP propaganda line that is for peace and mutual development and mutual cooperation around the world. The former president's biggest achievement was that he completely changed the terms of debate in the United States about how to deal with communist China. That's why the Chinese Communist Party went out of its way to prevent Trump from being reelected. Now that the new administration is in power, it is still impossible for the CCP to achieve its real goal. Waller also said that the transformation of U.S.-China relations under Trump was such that it could never go back to the way it was. He added, the Biden administration is now hemmed in from pursuing a more accommodationist approach toward Beijing. This is actually what we see. My fellow patriots, if you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter. We are trying to create our own platform as soon as possible so we can report on the news uncensored. And if you're able to, please consider supporting Front Page by donating. I've included both links in the description below. One day before leaving office, the Trump administration publicly announced the designation of the oppression of the Uyghurs by the Chinese Communist Party as a genocide and crimes against humanity. The designation of a government committing genocide is the harshest charge possible. The current president of the United States, Joe Biden, has expressed the same view. The Washington Examiner reported on January 24th that Emily Horn, a spokesperson for Biden's National Security Council, confirmed that Biden's stance is consistent with that of the previous administration. President Biden has called the oppression of the Uyghurs a genocide, and he stands against it in the strongest possible terms. We all know that Biden has had a very good relationship with Beijing, so why would he exhibit toughness toward the CCP? The reason is that the Trump administration has provided all of us a clear understanding of the threat of the CCP and educated the public about the true nature of the communist forces. It is a consensus across the country that communist China is the biggest threat of freedom to the world. Facing strong public opinion, Biden has to change. Last May, Biden did not consider China a competitor of the United States. What he said at that time was, China is going to eat our lunch. Come on, man. But by last October, his narrative changed, calling China the most significant challenge to the United States of any nation, America's biggest competitor. Now, even if the new administration plans to soften its policy towards the CCP, the room for that is very limited. According to multiple media reports, Biden said he would not immediately remove the current U.S. tariffs imposed on Chinese goods. He also intends to first review the existing U.S.-China agreement and develop a coherent strategy with traditional allies to request China to play by international norms. When it comes to dealing with the CCP, Biden and his chosen cabinet members must also make changes in response to public opinion. During the U.S. Senate hearings on January 19th, nominee for Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines publicly stated their anti-communist stance. Antony Blinken said that the Trump administration took the correct stance towards the Chinese regime. There is no doubt that the regime poses the most significant challenge of any nation state to the United States. Although he disagrees very much with the way he went about it in a number of areas, tackling the various threats posed by the Chinese regime has bipartisan support. Janet Yellen said that the Biden administration will use all available tools to fight China's abusive, unfair, and illegal practices that undercut America's economy. She called China our most important strategic competitor. Avril Haines promised an aggressive response to China and to counter its illegal and unfair practices. Haines testified at the hearing, "We should provide the necessary intelligence to support long-term bipartisan efforts to outcompete China, gaining and sharing insight into China's intentions and capabilities, while also supporting more immediate efforts to counter Beijing's unfair, illegal, aggressive, and coercive actions, as well as its human rights violations wherever we can." Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, "China is the most concerning competitor that we're facing." He also promised lawmakers a laser-like focus on making sure the U.S. maintains a competitive edge over the growing Chinese military. Of course, there is a big difference between Biden and Trump's toughness on the CCP. Biden's crackdown on the CCP was, after all, forced by circumstances, unlike Trump and Pompeo, who truly recognized the nature of the CCP. What former President Trump did was call the world and Chinese people to unite to end the CCP's tyranny. So public opinion is the most critical. We absolutely cannot give up our voice now. Be sure to hold on, to express your opinion, and do the right thing. The stance of the U.S. government on communist China could lead to more countries or companies putting pressure on the CCP. Let's take a look at Canada. On January 24th, Michael Chong, Conservative Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, and Garnet Genuis, Conservative Shadow Minister for International Development and Human Rights, released a joint statement on the genocide of the Uyghur Muslims in China. The statement said that reports demonstrate in exhaustive detail the magnitude of abuses perpetrated by the government of China against Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims, and are indicative of the government of China's escalating disregard for human rights and international law, including in Hong Kong, as well as with Tibetans, Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, and other ethnic and religious minorities. The statement declared, "We therefore call on the Trudeau government to join the Biden administration in officially recognizing the Uyghur genocide. We also call on the government to encourage recognition of the genocide by other allies. Finally, we call on the government to work with allies, including the U.S., to take coordinated action in response to this genocide." Let's see what Prime Minister Trudeau will do. Yesterday, I said that Biden signed many unreasonable executive orders to give back to specific interest groups. Today, National File released a video that may provide another explanation. That is when Biden signed the executive orders. He didn't even know what he was signing. In the video, Biden says, "I don't know what I'm signing," but he signed it anyway. The National File dug up another classic from Biden's campaign. He said that if he is elected president of the United States, he would,
"I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure."
What exactly does that mean? Can anyone understand? Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Due to the increasing scrutiny and restrictions, please subscribe to our newsletter by clicking the link below. If anything happens, we'll keep in touch and let you know where we move to. And again, if you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe the video and share it with at least one of your friends, because everyone deserves to know the truth. Thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.